Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Thiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show where truth matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 1 p.m. Central Time. As we get right home with you in the afternoon, it's always a pleasure. You can find us a number of different ways. You can find us syndicated on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. You can also find us on all the social media sites. Yeah, I still do them, even though I get kicked off sometimes for stuff I got to say. But anyway, I still do them all the way. But I have to say it's a little bit better than it used to be. I can actually say the word jab and not get taken off anymore. So, shh. I'm asking for it. But anyway, thank you again so much for watching. Continue sending emails. That makes my day. It really does. And you can continue sending those to Donna at donnasedge.com, Donna at donnasedge.com. Would definitely appreciate that as well. But keep on watching. We appreciate it. And by the way, find us on YouTube. And so it's been a long time since we've been kicked off of YouTube. So, good luck, huh? But anyway, thank you so much for doing that. I want to invite my very special friend. Her name is Terri LaPoint. Terri and I are friends. We have the same views on, I think, probably just about everything. And you've written a book, you're an author, and you're a speaker. Mm-hmm. And you have an important announcement you would like to make.
Yes, it kind of. So if your listeners have heard what I talk about, I fight for families. That's what I do. I fight in Montgomery. I go to DC and advocate for families because, families are the building block of society and they're foundational. So, after much prayer and talking with my family and all that, I am running for U.S. Congressional Seat 3.
And that would be, now what area does that consist of?
That's like the eastern part of Alabama. The eastern gate goes from Gadsden over to St. Clair County and down to the Auburn Opelika area.
Mm-hmm. So, that's a good district too. I mean, you're going to find families there who want to keep their families and keep them safe.
Of course. One of the early medical kidnap stories I did came from eastern Alabama. Cleburne County, that area where an autistic family lost all of their kids to DHR, Child Protective Services, because the little one, who was about 5 years old, was autistic and he eloped. I didn't even know the term before that, but he got out of the house because those kids are Houdini children sometimes, and he got out and was heading to a pond, as autistic children sometimes do, and they took away all the children, and then they took the newborn baby because the mother was pregnant at the time. They took away the newborn baby. Now they got them all back, but that never should have happened. That was a lot of unnecessary trauma to a family that just needed some help with a kid who they needed some strategies to help keep this kid from getting out, and they were working through those. So, but that was one of my earliest cases, was here in Alabama. Probably I hadn't been doing this more than a year and a half when I covered that story. And this whole district is a lot of rural, lot of families, a lot of communities, and we care about the big things, the what's going on overseas, and obviously about the border. We care about, but the main thing we care about is our families, providing for our families economic opportunities, and basically keeping the government out of our business when it's not necessary. We don't need the handouts. We need government to do what it's constitutionally supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And let us live our lives and raise our families. And I think that's going to be a common thread I know it is in Alabama. And we believe in the Constitution. We're patriotic. We support doing what's right, doing the right thing, even if it's not the popular thing, or even if it's if it doesn't get you political, I don't know, the establishment, praises or whatever. Let's do the right thing. do the right thing.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question, because you've done a lot of different things, and all of those have kind of got you to where you are right now.
Yes.
So what you've done in the past, I know you were in the media for a while, and well, that gets you ready for the world, I'm telling you.
Well, but it was alternative media. It wasn't mainstream media. And I learned about, okay, so why doesn't mainstream media want to cover these things? And I saw the politics involved in that. And so it was alternative media to just get out the truth. I was investigating, trying to find out what's going on. What was the threat to our families? Yeah. So, yep, I did that for several years.
Well, I have to say that gets you ready for seeing the public. So you're, what you need to do and what you need to say. But, and I know you're such a good person. Why are you running for office?
And one of the things that I've seen, it's just, okay, so after I did my my stint with Medical Kidnap, I was their lead investigative reporter for a little over 4 years. And after that, I started going with groups to Washington, D.C. several times a year to advocate for things. And I was actually, even long before that, Representative Kenneth Pascal, he wasn't a representative then here in Alabama, told me, he said, Terri, if you'll watch things on the state level, they change when the federal government changes the funding. And when the federal government changes the funding structure, then the states change things to maximize the funding. And I paid attention all these years and watched that, and I see that. And then in January, I went to an Eagle Forum meeting, their policy meeting, and all of these things that they're fighting for that are for righteousness and justice and fighting for families and advocating, all of their things that they're fighting for are affected by the federal funding. They're fighting on the state level, but it's all impacted by what comes from the federal funding. And that's not the Senate that really is in charge of that. That's the House of Representatives. I mean, if you studied 8th grade civics, the funding bills start in the House of Representatives. So I want to go up there. And when I was really thinking about that and praying about it, I was really seeking the Lord about what to do. And I told God several years ago, if you ever want me to do this, I will obey. I'll do what you want me to do, God. But he's really been putting that on my heart, very much so. And after that Eagle Forum meeting, and I really just was seeking the Lord, and he said, yeah, it's time. It's time to do that.
Well, I'm on the outside looking in. I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, there are politicians, and you don't appear as a politician to me.
No, I don't think you can accuse me of that at all. No.
Which makes you someone that I would vote for because of that. I mean, Donald Trump is not a politician. And look at what he's making happen, because that's not him. He's a businessman. He's used to doing things, without the government being involved in everything that he does. And to me, that makes a successful person who's running for office.
Well, I was a mom. Well, I am a mom. I'm a mom, and we homeschooled some. And during the junior high, the civics, our government education, the part of the curriculum that was dealing with government and civics and American history, it just was really this light bulb moment that, yes, we were taught it, but we haven't seen it so much of our lives, that the citizens, the people, are supposed to have a real significant voice in our government. It's not supposed to be about the power brokers and the corporations and the lobbyists and all these other voices and the foreign leaders that are in the those kinds of things. It's not supposed to be them that are having the major voice. It is supposed to be government of the people, for the people, by the people. And I started realizing that I can have a voice, and I started getting involved in making calls on bills that were important. I think the very first bill I really spoke up for was for stricter penalties in Alabama for child molesters. So, that's something I definitely believe in. Child trafficking. I pray every single day to see an end to child trafficking. That's huge. America should not be the largest supplier of children for this. This should not be, but that's what the facts are. So,
well, it's a
yeah,
money maker. It's a money maker
it
out
is a
there.
money maker.
I'll tell you, that's going to be a tough one to get a hold of.
Yeah, I know, but the foster care system, when the supply of children coming out of the foster care system is huge. And as I spoke to a really great judge the other day, and that's in this district, and I thought, if all the judges did what he did, then we wouldn't have nearly the problem that we do. But one of the points that he made, and I think, and I've thought about this a lot, is that children who are broken, the children who are wounded, they are more easy targets and prey. So let's do what we can to strengthen parents and families and give families the tools. We can like at the border, the fentanyl and the drugs coming across the border. My gosh, that does not make parents' jobs easy at all. Those things we talk about the impact on the economy and the impact on all kinds of things, but it really impacts families very, very much so. So,
but then again, if it impacts families, that automatically impacts everything else.
Everything else. Exactly. Families are the core. Mm-hmm. It impacts everything. Veteran suicide. I actually spoke to a veteran the other day, and he was he had post-traumatic stress, and he was dealing with family court and trying to process his post-traumatic stress and dealing with a divorce and custody issues. And there are resources out there for these guys, but I think we need to do a better job of really connecting them to those resources, because one of the things that I've seen in working with the family's issues is that the veteran suicide is very closely connected to battling in family court, fighting for their families.
Absolutely. Now, what would be your duties and what would be expected of you?
It's a good question. One, I think, is to hear the voice of the people that are in the district and to take those issues to Congress, to stand up for people. Aren't going to have to, if I'm elected, when I'm elected, you will know that I'm going to be standing up for what is conservative, constitutional values. You don't have to call me to tell me to vote pro-life. I'm going to vote pro-life. You just got to know that about me. I'm going to vote pro-life. If it comes up with anything that's pro-life, I'm going to vote pro-life. I want to be a legislator is to be a voice for the people and to be a voice to stand up for what is constitutional and what is right. And so you're involved, and lawmakers are involved in making laws and voting for laws and getting the input of people. I see a lot of things where there's a lot of lobbyists and the people with the power brokers, the establishment, that are being the louder voices in some of this legislation. But we need to hear from the people who are directly affected. We need to hear, if we're talking about farmers, we need to be talking to the farmers. If we're talking about veterans, we need to be talking to the veterans themselves. If we're talking about foster families, we need to talk to the kids and former foster kids. We need to talk to the parents. We need to talk to the parents who are losing kids. Why are so many of the kids in that system? We need to be talking to them.
Let's talk about farmers for a few minutes. Now, a few years ago, there was throughout all of Alabama, probably throughout the whole southeastern part of the United States, there were a group of people who wanted to put windmills and put those on farms. And so let me tell you what I learned about this, because to me, it was like, big deal. They'll make a little money off of it. But here's what happens. To hold those huge windmills up, it would have destroyed farmland, because they have to put these big pillars of concrete under the ground. You have big dig holes so the windmills will stay up. We have windy weather in Alabama, okay?
We do.
In the southeast. So my question about that was this. Okay, how long is the contract for? If there's a contract, how long will the farmers be paid for this? And what happens if the government decides to go do something else? Okay, are these farmers going to be stuck with a bunch of windmills with concrete all over their farm land? It seems as if sometimes farmers aren't told the whole story until it's too late.
And I think that's really important. And, I've taken some trips out west, and you see, for miles and miles, you see these massively huge things. And, at first glance, a windmill. Okay, well, that's smart. But they have not figured out a way to do it economically and where it makes sense. And there's all kinds of problems that they're seeing with them. If one of those arms breaks, if it falls on somebody, if there's a storm, and we get tornadoes here. We do that. That's a reality. Imagine if that tornado goes through there and those things, you think you'd want to talk about some destruction of property. And you see the pictures don't do it justice. You can't even imagine, just looking at the picture, how massively huge those things are. And if those things are falling and blowing places, that's going to cause massive destruction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a question about that. And it was like, how everybody is about the bald eagle. Do not kill one. They'll throw you under the jail cell. And
right. Do not. We like bald eagles.
So what if one of my windmills actually kills an eagle? Am I going to be responsible for that? Am I going to go to prison for it?
Question.
They do kill a lot of birds every year.
They do. I've seen that too. It's a much bigger issue. It's not been... It's kind of like somebody had this great idea. We're going to do windmills. We're going to save energy and all that. But it wasn't well enough researched, and it wasn't well enough. It's not working like they said it was going to work.
Okay. Now let me mention this, because I know you're not establishment. I get that. I know you well enough. And I wouldn't want to argue the part about making you establishment. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure you'd set me straight. But anyway. So you're not establishment. However, You could be in a room full of politicians who are establishment.
Mm-hmm.
That one, I know you. What are you going to do when they don't have to tie you down to get you to shut up? Because I know you're going to speak your voice.
I will. People have found out that if they try to shut me up from speaking the truth, I'm not going to do it. I have learned over the years that the more I speak the truth, the more people want to hear it, because it's for so long, it's like people have been afraid to speak the truth. And in the past few years, there's been a lot more people speaking the truth. But of course, like you talked about, we get deplatformed. You got to say things in just a certain way so that you don't get kicked off of Facebook or whatever. And so I'm going to speak the truth. And I'm not going to back down. Now, I will listen. To different sides and different perspectives, because even I've learned a long time ago, when you got left, right, you got all the different things, but there are reasons why people are being on the other side of you. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Is that they're a bad person? Sometimes that is. Sometimes they're just an awful person. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes they've got a perspective that there's something in there. It's like, you actually have a point there. Let's fix this. And because you're pointing out something that, and maybe an unintended consequence that we didn't see from the right, that would hurt people. Okay, let's listen. Let's work. But I do believe in being kind to all people, but I do believe in being firm about your beliefs. So there's that balance. And so I've gotten the wisdom of years, and to be able to learn that. It's been a lifelong lesson to learn how to balance being firm with being, the listening ear, and having that balance.
Well, sometimes we've just been misguided. It could be something, a family you grew up in, the way they thought. Mine was kind of weird because Dad Democrat, Mother Republican, and I was kind of like, do we have to vote for somebody just because they have an R&D in front of their name? Do they? So I made everybody mad and voted for Ross Perot back when Bush and Clinton. But anyway, to me, that was the best choice. It was a businessman. He was not, I keep saying not a
Not establishment, not a politician.
And you're not a politician. You're not an establishment either way. And I think that needs to be clear with folks who are out there listening to this right now. You're running because you've got a heart for the people.
Yes.
So
and
what would be the three most important issues to you? I know working with the children and the way kids are done, traffic, that kind of, I know that's one. But what are some other things that you'd like to just work on, just to change it and make the world a better place?
Well, one of the things President Trump is working on very, very strongly is border security. Making sure that we keep our borders secure and keeping the bad guys out and making a way for good people to come in. There's some better solutions, and education. He's sending education more back to the states, which I think is great. That needs to be happening. Fighting corruption, really and truly. I want to root out the corruption. I want to find where the corruption is happening. I want to support what DOJ is doing, and dig in, find the corruption in every area, shine that spotlight. As a reporter, I learned to do. That's why I did that. I was exposing what was going on so that we can root it out, so that we can see a return and restore the value of our Constitution, restore the values that really made America great and are making America great. The democracy, like real democracy, actual democracy, but we're not actually a total democracy. We are a democrat, a Democrat, how is it a republic? I know the word and you know the word, but right here I'm saying this, a democratic republic.
There you go. Well, the neat thing about being an American is you can have a voice. Okay. Of course, some of us feel stifled out sometimes, but that's the whole point. We have different ideas. Okay. An example, my daughter-in-law is from Russia.
I remember you talking about that. Yes.
So it's a little different over there. Okay. She grew up now, by the way, she's a huge Donald Trump fan. It has been since day one of the early ones. And so I asked her one time what she liked about him. She likes the truth being spoken.
Yes.
I said, you don't take him as being rude? She said, no. I mean, she grew up in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. So to her, he was not rude. It wasn't to me either.
He's a New Yorker, and I spent a summer in New York in college, and so it's a different way of thinking. I was a nanny that summer, and it was a completely different way of thinking. And okay, it's not that they're bad. It's not that we're better. It's that it's a different mindset. So just,
but I like say this is something else where people differ with that. I don't take it as rude. I take it as that's the facts, ma'am.
It's direct. It's very direct.
I like that. No, and that's why I think you're seeing a new America evolve here. Okay, we're going to pay attention now. Okay, we haven't paid any attention as a whole in the country. We've been like, let other people worry about that. Well, that's where it got us, because we let other people worry about that and we didn't get involved. And I think people are getting involved now. So they're looking for new candidates like you. They're looking for new candidates who are going to get out there and speak the truth, even if it hurts someone's feelings. Well, then you still speak the truth.
Right.
But I like the way you speak the truth. It's not a demeaning way, but it's directing it to the point. And that's what we like. We want someone who is in office who is direct and to the point.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the popularity of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I love listening to her. She does exactly what you're saying. And legislators that do that Susan DuBose here in Alabama. What is a woman? We've got two genders. It doesn't mean that we don't care about people that have different beliefs or whatever. We do. We can absolutely care about them. And even I remember in the earlier days, about the whole transgender and the gay, whatever. One of the biggest things that they had was they would have their significant other would be in the hospital, and because they weren't the spouse, they couldn't visit them in the hospital.
Yeah.
That was one of those things where listening to the other side, you see a point. Okay, you've got a very good point. The hospital doesn't need to tell you you can't see that person that you've spent the last 20 years of your life with. Okay, that's not for the hospital to say. That you should be allowed in there. Okay, so we can have love, we can have compassion, but we don't lie to people to make them feel better. I'm sorry,
And that's what's happened, throughout, for especially the past few decades. And again, that's why we're in the shape we're in. I would much rather, Terri, you tell me if I'm about to fall off a cliff, instead of going, well, I don't want to hurt Donna's feelings. Maybe she wants to fall off the cliff. I would appreciate you actually reaching your arm out and yelling at me, grabbing me, saying you're about to fall off the cliff. I would appreciate you doing that. And I think that's what we're looking for now. We're looking for people who will tell us the truth, and make life a whole lot better. Let's go into a commercial break. I can't believe 30 minutes has already flown.
Is it really?
By. Already has. Let's go into a break. We'll be right. We got to pay for this, Terri. Let's go into a break. We'll be right back in a minute. Everybody hang in there.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At LaPoint Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lemonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at LaPoint you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with LaPoint Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community. Whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need, toys at Christmas, or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
Good afternoon. We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. That's why you're seeing Terri LaPoint here. Terri, you are also an author. Let's talk about some of your writings.
Okay. Well, I wrote for a long time for medicalkidnap.com. Before that, I wrote for a couple of other things and covered some health freedom kinds of issues. My book is of voices that will not be silenced, which really and truly, even though that's the book of, it's a book and a story of one particular family, that it really speaks up for a lot of other voices. And that's my philosophy. I've always wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, for people who don't seem to be heard. So that's something I've always done. And I, my very first article I ever wrote was for Midwifery Today for birth freedom, that women should have the right to give birth where and with whom they choose, even if they want to have a home birth. So I see that as a freedom issue. Freedom is a big thing to me. The freedom to there were some of us back when they were telling us we had to wear the masks, and that would prevent these tiny little germs from getting through. And I did have some training there, so I knew that was baloney. And I remember talking to somebody in the industry, and they said, well, everybody knows the masks don't work and it's just for show. And I was like, no, everybody doesn't know that. So I was talking a lot about that, because I remember getting some training that, once those paper masks get moist, they're no good. So they may last 30 minutes and have some effect, but after 30 minutes, it's not any good anyway. So it was virtue signaling and acting like you were great. I remember because I knew that they weren't doing any good, and I knew I wasn't sick, and I wasn't going to make anybody sick. So I had no intention of wearing one of those things. And I went in someplace and they were insisting, you have to wear a mask. I think it was a doctor's appointment or something. You have to wear a mask. So I had this old lace shirt, and I cut it apart, and I put some yarn, and I made a mask out of lace with, massive big holes. And I put that lace mask on, and they were fine, and they would let me in. I was like, what are we doing? We're okay. We're having this policy that means nothing. It absolutely does nothing except for control. You obviously know it's not doing anything, or you wouldn't have been okay with me wearing a lace mask. So
it was a mask of some sort. I'll tell you what my son did. So he said, I'm going to get me one that says Trump on it. And he said, every time I go into a place and they say wear a mask, I'll say, okay. Trump on it. That infuriated a lot of people. But anyway, really, it's all about, it was about control right there.
It was about control.
A test run to see if they could. Now, if they tried again, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they're going to go for that.
And whether you believe in, you talked about the jab word, whether you believe in those or not, as American citizens, we should have the right to decide whether or not to do that. If you've got cancer, do you want to do chemo, or do you want to do something that's alternative? It's you. The others, there are some who are very fond of saying it's my body, it's my choice, but only on one issue.
Yeah, really.
Only on one issue. It's like, okay, so that one's actually a baby whose life matters, and they have the constitutional right, if we actually consider the constitutional right to life. But all this other stuff, it's my body. Why do I not get to choose what goes into my body? Why does, like with Robert F. Kennedy and all these additives in our foods and these things that they're putting in the Franken foods, the things that they're putting into our foods that we don't even know, why don't we get to know what they're putting in it? And why don't I get to say what I get to eat, what I want to put in my body, and you put in your body? I'm not saying don't have those things available. I'm not saying ban all those things. I'm not at all. I'm saying give you the choice, because you're an American citizen, and you should have the right to choose whether or not you do that.
Let me ask you a question, and it's all about education. Okay, because I mean, you can be raised in a family that's nothing but French fries and hamburgers every single day. You're probably going to have some health issues there.
Probably.
But what about, I'm not talking anything to mandate, but just education, teaching people how to preserve food, how to do stuff like that. Is that something you could help bring out for the masses?
That's a really good idea. I mean, because we've got to rein in the spending. But I don't think it costs a lot of money for some place that's teaching one thing to pivot and teach healthier things. And
just workshops that you can go to.
Right. And citizen-led things,
Yeah.
and yeah, let's encourage that. And when we were talking about families, let's encourage families. I remember the ad council had this huge thing, and we still hear it every now. You don't have to be perfect to be a foster parent. Well, parents aren't perfect either. Abuse is bad. Don't do it. That's a crime. But
common sense.
But we don't all have the same beliefs about different things. Okay, that's fine. That shouldn't be something that gets your kids taken away just because you have a different opinion than somebody else on a lot of things. So we don't have to be perfect, but let's use our resources more wisely. Stewardship is a good word. Let's steward the money that we've got for taxpayers instead of money laundering, dare I say, money laundering through the establishment and politicians and some of the nonprofit organizations and foreign entities and governments. Instead of money laundering, let's use our money to say fix roads and bridges. Let's use our money to strengthen our families and to do things that make sense for the American people. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with fair tax, flat tax?
I remember hearing about that a long time ago. Neil Bortz from Atlanta talked a lot about that, and it seemed pretty logical.
Well, it would be a good way to do away with the IRS. I'm beginning to wonder if Trump's about to put something like that into effect, because some of the things he's doing and the things that he's talking about sounds a lot like fair tax or flat tax. I'm going to get Chuck Bailey. Chuck and Mary Lynn Bailey are with Alabama Fair Tax. We'll get them to get in contact with you.
Okay.
You really need to sit down and talk to them about that. But anyway, we're all looking for ways to make ourselves, our homes, our place, our little plot here on the earth, where to make that good and not to be taken away from you. You know, we're all afraid of the government, coming in. But I wanted to talk to you about some things that are going through Montgomery right now. Or you just tell us your version, what you think is happening in Montgomery.
Well, let me talk about there. Representative Kenneth Pascal has a couple of bills. I actually testified last week to the committee, the Children and Senior Advocacy Committee, about a bill that's DHR transparency and Due Process Rights Notification Act. And it was fascinating that the people that were speaking in favor of the bill were, I haven't had my kids taken away, but the others that spoke were, well, a couple of them have had that experience, and they were innocent families that had their kids taken or grandkids taken. But the ones that were speaking against the bill were all government entities. So we've got the government testifying against the American people for notifying us of due process rights that are already law, that are already in the Constitution. And we're asking for DHR to be transparent and to at least be accountable a little bit, maybe to the legislators, be a little bit more accountable, to give some data points to the legislature, and to do things like, let's see, the Family First Act, which is federal law that says that kids should go to family first instead of to strangers. Do that. And let's see, Fourth Amendment, that you don't take search and seizure without a court order or a warrant. Do that. Constitution, again, Bill of Rights, do that. But it seems that apparently they think that if we give parents due process rights and notification and follow the Constitution, that children are going to die. But I would point out, and I didn't have the chance to rebut, I did write a letter because I was the first one that spoke, but that children are at least 6 times more likely to be abused, molested, raped, or killed in foster care than they are if you left them in their own homes. And when they're talking so much about the abuse in Alabama, I found the Alabama data, 19%, no more than 19% of the kids are taken for reasons of abuse, of physical abuse or sexual abuse. And those are crimes, and they should be prosecuted. You shouldn't be abusing your kids. There's no excuse for that. But that doesn't account for the bulk of the removals and the encounters with DHR.
Let me ask you a question. This is about grandparents' rights, because it's just an overwhelming amount of grandparents are actually taking care of their grandkids right now. And it seems like they don't have the rights of the parents that the parents would have.
Well, and they shouldn't have the same rights that the parents have. I mean, grandparents shouldn't be able to overrule the parents in decision making. Like if the grandparents believe that you should homeschool and you want to send your kids to public school, or vice versa, that's an issue. The parents have the rights over their own kids. So disagreements over some of those things, right? But if the parents are in a situation where the kids are going to be removed because of drugs or real issues, then the grandparents should have first dibs on that. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, relatives, provided. And this is my caveat, because my grandparents raised me and there were good reasons. Okay. We didn't go through the court system. There were good reasons, and I would never, ever, I don't care what came at me, I would never have wanted my kids' grandmother to raise them. So you do have to look. You can't just say blanket grandparents' rights.
Right.
There is that caveat. There's a couple of sides there.
Sometimes it's just the family. I mean, it's been a generation of abusers over and over again.
Right. But
mental issues and that kind of thing.
Right. But in those cases, is there an aunt, is there an uncle, is there a person from the school or in the community, a neighbor or church, somebody that knows that child already has a relationship with, rather than placing them in foster care? Foster care really is, when it is used correctly, it is a wonderful thing. But it is abused many times because kids are put there that shouldn't be. And then there are people that are using it for a paycheck and they're not caring for these kids. I've heard from too many kids these horror stories. And then pedophiles are attracted to that. And we're not doing an adequate job of weeding out the pedophiles and abusers that are in foster care. I remember a lawyer in Alabama telling me several years ago, she said, Terri, if you watch the cases of real severe abuse stories that are happening, it'll say the headline at the top will say parents did this or da 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 da. But if you read way down in the story, at the bottom it'll say step parent or foster parent or adoptive parent. And it's like that makes a difference. So as Nancy Buckner, the head of DHR, pointed out, in Alabama, 90% of the abuse is caused by parents or caretakers. Okay. Right. Okay. But caretakers are foster parents, adoptive parents, step parents. Those are caretakers too. Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question. Okay. And this is Donna Fiesel term, just plain old nip it in the bud. Okay. So what about, there's need to be a better interviewing process of foster parents? I mean, that seems like maybe we're just rushing it. Is the foster care system just too overwhelmed? I mean, why can't there be a better interviewing process to make sure we got the right foster parents?
I think that really needs to happen. One, you need to be sending the kids to relatives when you can. And you don't need to be dismissing relatives for some reason because you make more money because you place them with a stranger. But yeah, there's got to be a better way. And not only just checking with the parents, but the potential foster parents, but maybe some other people around them to check and do a little bit of sleuthing and figure out what kind of person they are. Go back in their social media. You go back. I mean, find their presence, and you can learn a lot about a person. And you should, if you're
on Facebook
taking money
with people. Okay, so let me make it, and that's a great comment you just made, because when we were growing up, we had neighbors that were 2 doors down from us, Mr. and Miss Parnell. I would have loved for them. I would have loved for them to have been our parents. They couldn't have kids, and they wanted to adopt. Well, the adoption services said no, she's a diabetic, and there was something else that they said was wrong with him. They would have been like the perfect parents for any kid. I'm just telling you, they couldn't have kids wanted to adopt. Their dog and their cat were their kids because they couldn't adopt, and they would send ice cream over to our house. And, so they were just like really, really sweet people. So is that still a case? Are there people who are being overlooked maybe because of their diabetic or, something?
Oh, I think so. I think so. Grandparents have been told that you're too old. Grandparents have been told they're too old to care for their own grandkids. Or they've had a diagnosis or this or that. There are things like that they are being overlooked. But then the stories of the people that they approve in place of them makes no sense. Yeah. So but again, it goes back to the federal funding. Because ASFA, the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 97, that's a federal law. Then it's federal funds that goes to states for removing a child, placing them with strangers, and adopting them out to strangers. You don't get those bonuses if you keep the family together or place them with family. So that's a huge bonus on every child's head that we lose. And I've got some ideas of there's lots of really good ideas from people that have been paying attention of how we can change this funding structure to better serve, to actually protect the kids that need to be protecting, because too often that's not happening, and to not take children from families where they shouldn't be. There's a lot we can do, and I intend to do it. That's going to be one of the very first things. Actually, the first bill that I intend to file is I want to bring back Justina's Law, which is something that you remember the Tea Party representative Michelle Bachmann did a bill. Yeah, remember her? She had one that said simply, you can't use federal funds to use foster kids as lab rats. It's essentially, that's what it said. That will be the first bill I file. On day one, I will have that prepared, and I've got it already. I will have that. I will file that on the very first day I can file a bill.
Well, okay, let me make a comment. I want to ask you a question. Okay, so how about this? Okay, things aren't explained to us. Okay, first of all, anytime a politician tells me, now, Donna, don't disagree with that. That's for the children. Every time they say that, it freaks me out because I'm going, no, it's probably for your pocket. I doubt that it has anything to do for children. By the time it filters down, they might get 50 cents out of $10,000 maybe. Okay, so how about, and this could be your first thing, you will actually explain a bill. Okay, instead of just saying it's for the children and then just walking off and leaving me standing there with my mouth wide open, like explaining it. And this is another thing I wanted to ask you, because sometimes this something can sound pretty. It can sound like, oh, that's going to help a bunch of kids. How can we decipher that? I'm using Southern language here. How can we decipher that? How can we know whether something's actually good or bad?
That is such a good question, because they speak in lawyerese. And back in my doula days, I worked with this labor doula that was this walking encyclopedia, and she would just talk to this mother, and she would give her blah 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 and all this complicated language, and I would turn around and I would translate to the mother what she is saying in normal language. Okay, I can do that. Yes, I will do that. I absolutely will, because lawyerese, and you can take something really simple, because we've been working with Kenneth Pascal on this bill and talking with a lawyer. It's like this one phrase that says, it sounds like it says one thing, but actually in legal terms, it's saying this other thing. Okay, so that's, we can do a one pager. They call it a one pager that kind of gives you the information on what the bill is about in English, in plain English. Let's do that, but let's have it accurate, because I've noticed a lot of federal bills, what it says it's about, you can almost bet from the title that the bill does the opposite of what it's going to do.
Yeah, that's my point.
Right. Yeah. So, whatever. Sometimes I don't know who makes the titles. I'll find out. Who makes the titles, but I want to make sure that people do understand. And if you ever ask me, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. If I don't know the answer, I'll say I don't know. And there are things I don't know. And there's things that I have to learn, and I want to learn. I want to learn. But, I'll tell you the truth. I give you my word. People know me that I will tell you the truth. Now, just maybe a funny story on that. You got time for a funny story? One of my kids, we were going home from a birthday party. He was turning 13, and I was taking the kids home. And I got back in the car after pumping the gas, and one of them said, "Well, 13. What is 13? Like with the Jewish? Isn't that where they do circumcision? What is that?" And so I did tell him, I could tell you, but I think maybe you need to ask your mom. So there are times that maybe that's the appropriate, but that's with kids. That was a kid. I wasn't prepared for that, really. Maybe I should have been. Knowing this kid.
Well, no, I think you did the wise thing. I think you did that. So, and let me give you an example of that. Okay, I have an ex-sister-in-law who's a nut. Okay, so, and we were afraid to be around her kids because she was too speaky. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so we were afraid that that if we like accidentally helped one, the mother would say, "Oh, they're molesting." I mean, we didn't know what she would say because she's just nuts. And so I would like, I don't know how you do this, but there are some people who they want to know you're doing something like that. It's almost like a narcissistic type personality where they want to be the one who is the one who reveals something, and we just have to use common sense.
Common sense. I plan to run a common sense campaign. I plan to be a common sense legislator. For the people, for the real people.
I've got you a slogan.
What's that?
Cornbread language approach. That's what I've told a number of people who are in office. I would ask, like, not on camera, but off camera. And I would say, well, what is this bill about? Because it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It sounds good. And you're saying it's for the kids, or it's for, gambling's for the kid and all this kind of stuff. And you're making it sound that way. But cornbread English, what does that mean? I mean, I've done that several times. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about why you're
at my slogan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, what is your slogan?
God, families, freedom. That's the point.
Freedom is wonderful. Anybody who has ever traveled outside the country before, and we have, and you have too, America's got freedoms we don't know we have. Now, sometimes it seems like they're going away. The administration we've got now is helping bring it back. But what I mean is people don't know what they've lost until they've lost it. Yeah. If you go to another country, sometimes, well, I mean, I served as a summer missionary when I was in college and went to South America. And I remember going to this area that was like, I worked in an orphanage for like a week, and it was the poorest of the poor, where they didn't even have their own belongings. They had a shelf of maybe a few little things, and then their clothes, they got their clothes for the week, and then they took them to the laundry, and then they got different clothes. They didn't even own their own clothes, but it was precious. I've still got a little yellow flower that one of those kids made for me. This is what my daughter-in-law said, and this is why she's such an advocate for freedom, because that's the way it was in the orphanage that she grew up in Russia. I mean, it was very much well like that.
Wow.
So, okay, let's talk about while you're out on the campaign. Is it okay for people to ask you questions?
Sure. Sure. And I don't promise to know every answer, but I promise that I can find out or learn, and I'll do my best.
and let me say this just for your peace of mind. Guys, when you're out asking questions to folks who are running for office, ask it in a nice tone. Don't bring your battle with you. Okay, just say whatever it is you want to say.
Yeah. I'm not your enemy.
Yeah,
I'm not your enemy. I want to fight for people.
But feel free to ask questions, because unless you ask a question, you really don't know what a person is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you look up my name, I've got a long social media history. I've been doing these articles and posting and stuff about medical kidnapping and about trafficking, different kinds of things. So, I mean, if you want to find out about me, it's not hard. Somebody told me, oh, the first thing you need to do with the campaign is you need to clean up your social media. I'm like, I am who I am, you know? And I don't.
That's the whole idea of you running for office, is you get to be who you are.
Yeah.
And who you are can clean up a huge mess.
That's my goal. That is my goal. I want to fight corruption and restore America to her values, to the godly constitutional values that we have.
You know, one way to do that is parental controls. Now, that was back in my day. Of course, I'm 65 years old, but I remember back in my day, there were certain television. Of course, we only had 3 channels back then. And then I was the remote control. I'd have to go outside and, the antenna. But anyway, so there was a time at night where different television programs could not be shown during child hours. In other words, it'd be after 12 midnight before you'd hear a cuss word, or it would be, talking about sex and stuff like that. That only happened after a certain period at night when kids are supposed to be in the bed. Why can't we bring back some of the parentals? Because I'm just telling you, I see commercials that look like soft porn to me.
Yeah. Well, there is a bill in the Alabama legislature about the pornography filters on the phones, because, our cell phones, we get our cell phones, and you can go through 30 something steps to turn off pornography filters. Did you know that? I didn't until I started hearing about. I mean, it's like this horrendous little process of all this stuff. If you know about it and you get your kid's phone, or they could do something where it just comes automatically, where it filters out the pornography, and you can go through some steps to turn it on if you're a pervert and you want to watch bad stuff. Shouldn't
it be the other way around? If you're a pervert and you want to see all this garbage, well, then you'll be the one that has to go through.
That's what the bill is trying to do. It's trying to make the phone manufacturers put the filter on there, have it already on, so that the perverts can turn it on if they want to. But the rest of us don't have to go through any steps to make sure it stays off of our phones or off of our kids. And really the threat is our kids' phones, because, if you, as a grown-up, it's like you can turn it off. And if something gets on there that shouldn't, and I thank God that's not as bad as it used to be in the early days. But the kids, it shouldn't be coming up on their phones. I remember a kid I knew trying to put in something about Disney, and this was back in the early 2000s, and they typed in something wrong, typed a letter, they spelled it wrong. They spelled something wrong, and it took them to a site they really didn't want to see.
I did that White House a long time ago when the internet first came out, whitehouse.gov. Well, I didn't put gov, I put something else. Man, it was a porn site. And I was like, whoa. I think it's when Clinton wasn't president then, but it would have been appropriate for him. Okay, girl, we're gonna have to go. Okay, about 30 seconds left. How can folks donate? How can folks help you along in the process?
I haven't got that set up yet, but it will be soon. Just hold on and invite me to come to talk to, I'll come to the park, or we can go to the library or whatever, go out to a restaurant, ask questions, talk about what's going on. But you can find me on Facebook. That's a really easy way to find me, is just my name, Terri LaPoint, TerriLaPoint. Just real simple. I'm on Facebook, and we'll be getting the campaign website up soon and all that, and the donations. But right now, I just want to get my name out and be able to talk to people. And
sounds good. All right, girl. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Okay,
definitely appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And best of luck to you. And guys, thank you so much for watching. You're the reason we do this. Continue sending emails. You don't know how it just makes my heart feel good. Send emails. Donna@donnasedge.com. Donna@donnasedge.com. Terri, hang around. I need to get you scheduled for next month. And you guys, we'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.